This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Palette, the only millennial not trying to attain wizardhood. Today we are taking a look at Cervine birth. Let's get right into this one. In 2009, an amateur video artist studying in the UK uploaded a video onto YouTube of a recent piece he had completed. After many reports and complaints, the video was taken down. The piece allegedly begins with a lingering shot of a foggy meadow that some believe to be located in Ireland. The only sound throughout the shot is a light hissing and what sounds like muffled, unintelligible speech. The camera starts zooming in on a white shape in a field. After several tedious minutes, the shape reveals itself to be an albino deer. A close-up shot of its eyes suddenly appears, showing signs of infection and possibly the beginning stages of blindness with them. I have to think if this video got big enough to where people would flag it and report it and get it taken down off of YouTube, that it would be uploaded somewhere else on another website. This is a tendency that I see. It's impossible to keep information like this off the internet once it's out there and once it's popular and has been circulated. This is sort of the kryptonite of the story, but I think I've read this story, by the way, but I think if you let the story take you away, it can take you to some interesting places. So we've gotten a pretty interesting image right here of a deer's eye from a screenshot from the actual video that is purported to have existed. No proof that it has existed. You can't find it anywhere, and that throws this whole thing into doubt, as I said. But an interesting idea and image and aesthetics of like a muffled, unintelligible speech. That I like, but it's not too unique yet. So let's get into the rest of the story. The following shot is a scene of the deer staring into a vanity mirror for about a minute. After this, the piece takes a turn for the bizarre, but the deer in the reflection moving in dissonance with the real one. Zooming in, the camera focuses on the deer in the reflection, which has begun to move out in an unnatural and grotesque fashion, as if something was molding it like a piece of clay. As these unnerving contortions continue, the camera zooms out, showing a shot of the real deer lying on the ground. People have described the deer as looking strangely at peace. So I want to know who's describing the deer as strangely at peace, even if it's just a random YouTube commenter or whatever. So thus far what we're getting is that an artist, a UK-based artist, video artist, made this video. So the images are interesting, but there's nothing necessarily insidious about this, and this will kind of be bore out as we continue reading the story. But it is an interesting image to evoke, and I wonder if this is the best way to tell this story. If it would be better if you just make the video. The video itself is the interesting thing, so why not just have an experimental video like this? Let's continue on. The shot goes on for roughly 2 minutes. The reflection is still twisting and gesticulating, but the mirror itself seems to be growing darker. The deer lying on the ground then starts to excrete a dark fluid from under its tail, suggesting that a birth is about to occur. The tar-like substance continues to bubble and seep out of the deer and onto the ground. This is the point where many people claim to have stopped watching. This is turning into one of those clickbait stories where it's just like, this deer was about to give birth, and you won't believe what happens next. Well, I don't think you'll believe what happens next either, so let's get right into it. Some accounts vary on what happens next, but many describe a scene where a stillborn, humanoid infant is birthed from the deer covered in a dark, tar-like sludge that makes it hard to describe exactly what it looks like. I think you've done a nice job, author, right here of describing what it looks like. Anyway, some have claimed it was a model of a human-animal hybrid put together by an artist for the sake of this film. A blurry close-up shot of the hybrid's face is seen for a few seconds before it cuts back to black, now broken, within the same field of the beginning. From the same field and beginning. Black and white stock footage of an audience applauding is shown in slow motion, and the film ends with a 5-minute shot of a black screen accompanied by unintelligible murmuring, slowly fading in volume. So I do want to know what the context is for the deer, the albino deer looking into the mirror when it's, molding and shaping. I want to know what's around the deer in the vanity mirror, what the rest of the surroundings are like, but that's kind of a nitpick. And again, all of this is completely believable because this is just an artist. I mean, if I had the time and resources, if you're an avid watcher of my stuff, can't you imagine me making something weird like this? A film like this? There's nothing necessarily sinister about this. It's all very expressive, so let's continue on. Many say that the film can no longer be found online, while others say that the audio track is sometimes circulated around file-sharing programs like BitTorrent. There are even some who claim to have attained the film itself through such means. Occasionally, screenshots surface on image boards and other such sites, but the film itself has hardly been seen since its initial debut. A year later, the artist posted another video on YouTube. This time, it was just a 5 minutes of a black screen in silence with just a link to a webcam site in the description to serve as evidence. Viewers described seeing a pair of dangling, pale feet slightly rotating above a knocked-over chair. So again, we're getting the sequel to Cervine Birth, which seems to be someone hanging themselves, and that's a very spooky image. I think they've done a nice job here. That would indeed be interesting, and I'm visualizing it very well. I have to say, though, I think it would be more interesting if there was an actual video of this. Now, when you actually start shooting stuff, there is a lot of work that goes into it, and you can't underestimate that, but this image in upon itself really isn't that hard to produce. It's not that hard to fake a shot like this, But anyway, let's continue on. The creator of the video, Cervine Birth, is best known for this shocking final piece, but not many are aware of his earlier work, which are similar in terms of content and style. Shot in black and white, the piece is often referred to as Foxtrot, was created in early 2005. The film begins with a shot of a moonlit forest, with a slow fade to the beginning of the first scene. A jaunt, I'm actually not sure how to pronounce that, and this is something I would fact check if this was supposed to be a finished piece, but I'm just digging around and critiquing it, so a gant, I'm going to say it's gant because I can, malnourished looking fox has seen staggering through the forest, wailing and crying in a haunting voice, with what appears to be a noose tied around its neck. That is a very vivid image. Very interesting, brilliant. I have to say, it'd probably be better if it was something that was actually visually designed. That's kind of, if you're picking up a theme here, it's that these things would be really interesting if they were actually made. The camera follows the rope to the end, where the fox cub can be seen dragging behind. It isn't certain whether the cub is dead or not. The film cuts to a brief shot of the crescent moon as it slowly devolves into a shapeless blur. The soundtrack for the film so far has consisted mostly of the fox wailing and a wailing musical track many describe as unnatural and unnerving. It cuts to a clearing in the forest. The fox is seen ambling towards the center, still dragging her young behind her. The music gradually fades into silence as the fox is curling up on the ground, getting ready to die. After a few moments with nothing but her final breaths breaking up the silence, a close-up of her face is shown. Her eyes are still glimmering under the moonlight. A pair of small, A pair of small, pale, childlike hands are starting to caress her face. More small hands start showing up in the shot before the camera slowly zooms out to show up much of the fox's body being covered and caressing hands and arms. The shot flickers out for a few more times before cutting to an interior of a darkened household. The camera slowly makes its way into the dining room, where a family of corpses is shown decaying in their seats. On the table is the same fox, but this time is alive and healthy, tending to her cubs. Close-up shots of the bodies follow, revealing them to possess wounds indicating a possible mass suicide. In the closing shot, a moth is seen fluttering about a dangling light bulb in a dark room when a hand that can only be described as animal-like reaches up and shuts it off. So I like this story a lot. I think that this story does have a few problems, though, justifying these kinds of films. I think that a very easy out for a story like this is to take YouTube out of the equation and to take there being a artist that is fabricating these things out of the equation. I think it would be more effective if it was just some VHS tape that was picked up, something that is not reproducible, and then it gets destroyed. Now, I know that that's cliche, and that's a very simple way of describing the concept that I'm going after, but it's too easy to just, say, oh no, the video is not online anymore and people just aren't picking it up. If it's out there, it's out there. It's kind of hard to get Genie back in the bottle, you know what I mean? So I really love the images of this story. And overall, I don't want to be too hard on it because I'm being very, very critical, and I know that. This story is still really good and a cut above the rest. I don't do ratings here, but I'm going to do a rating. It's like 9 out of 10. This is a really good story. And I don't want to undersell how interesting this is and how vivid the images are and how it's written in a overall journalistic way, a way that is a little bit talkative, but what you would imagine a person reporting this would how they would report this to you. So I do like it. There is a feeling of pitifulness being evoked by a lot of these images, all of them really, of hopelessness. The description of this fox with a noose around its neck and the cub, that is all very pitiful and disgusting, and it's hard to hear, it's hard to listen to, and it's easy to visualize, but hard to deal with the visual once it has been visualized. There is audio clips out there that have been fabricated. I don't know who fabricated them, whether it's the author of the story or someone else. It is also, I haven't seen this story being attributed to anybody in particular, which is unfortunate because I think I would really like to read anything else that this person has written, especially if it's in the same vein. A story that I really, really love, and I think a lot of people know this, is Normal Porn from Normal People. I'm a huge fan of that story. And that story has similar problems, but I think that they got around it quite effectively by saying that this did not get popular. So like Normal Porn from Normal People was a chain letter kind of thing, and it didn't quite get the same currency. This is a story that got big enough to be reported on YouTube. That means that it had to have gotten thousands and thousands of views. This doesn't have the same potential to be lost media. So a few problems with this story. Again, I'm a giant stickler, but I really do enjoy this story. Let me know what you think in the comments, whether you like the story just as it is, whether you think that I'm being too critical and that I'm being too much of a stickler about this realism stuff, which is completely plausible. These are just my opinions. But whenever I see a story like this that's doing so much right, I always feel hypercritical because, this story's just got a few problems. We can fix out those problems and iron them out. That is my mentality. Again, I'm kind of put in a weird position because I'm the one who is making this video, and then I feel like maybe people might be hesitant to disagree with me. I want to hear contrarian opinions. I'm not afraid of those. So those are more than welcome. I'm also very curious as to whether there's something I'm missing about this story, some interpretation out there that I'm just not picking up on. That would also be interesting to hear if you have opinions on that. But I think we're going to close this one out with our sponsor of the day, VHS players. VHS players, at least they're not as archaic as HD DVD players.